What's going on, YouTube? Bacon here, bringing another video. This one gonna be my week 4 match for the MWPA. This week we're going up against Nseliga, coach of the Hartford Wailords. We're sitting at 3-0 coming into this game, and the Wailords are sitting at 2-1. So big game here early in the season. Of course, every win is important in an 8-game regular season, especially when only 4 teams are making playoffs. So let me just really quickly get into the matchup here. We've got on the other side of the field, the potential for Landers, Therian, Mega Scizor, Weavile, Rotom Wash, Latias, Superior, Togekiss, Terrakion, Milotic, Alolan Marowak, and Porygon Z. So kind of a couple things to note. Weavile is a huge threat, and I expect him to obviously be bringing it. Whether it's going to be Choice Band, Expert Bell, Life Orb, whatever, not really sure. I would definitely expect to see it. And then I was expecting one of the 2 water types, whether it was Rotom or Milotic. I wasn't sure. I felt like Rotom made more sense, but Milotic was also pretty viable versus me. Maybe like a Flame Orb set to help deal with my Mamoswine and my Conkeldurr had some potential. Superior is scary, but I think I've got enough on my team to kind of deter it from coming, and if it did come, it'd have to be running HP Ground to hit my Heatran and my Muck. But again, I think I've got enough on the team that Superior was kind of an bring this week versus me. And then Alolan Marowak is obviously a difficult Pokemon to switch into. I don't really have anything on my team that is a good Alolan Marowak switch in the first place. So basically the idea for that thing is going to be to kind of box it out a little bit, limit its switch-ins as much as possible, and if it does switch in, have something that can kind of whack it from wherever it's at. Most of my team can hit it pretty hard, but not everything can. So it's going to be a little bit of a threat here if you decide to bring that. So that was kind of just a brief look at the matchup coming into it. He did bring pretty much what I expected to see for the most part, but let me get into my team builder a little bit. I've got Adamant, Life Orb, Mamoswine here with Thick Fat, Ice Shard, Icicle Crash, Earthquake, and Knockoff. Ice Shard's really nice to pick off a lot of stuff on his team, namely things like a setup variant of Lando T, or even like Latias or Superior if those things are chipped down a little bit. Really nice for those things. Icicle Crash is just kind of the secondary form of Ice Stab. If I do predict him to switch out from something like a Landorus, he really doesn't have a whole lot of stuff on his team that wants to take an Ice move, bar like potential Milotic or a Scizor. And those things are potentially 2-hit KO'd on switch in by Earthquake. Scizor, I'm expecting a bulkier variant, so perhaps not, but Milotic would be, assuming it's not running Flame Orb, would be 2-hit KO'd by Life Orb Earthquake. The Adamant giving us kind of that extra little bit of a damage boost. I didn't really feel like I needed the speed as much in this round. Still running close to max speed on Adamant though. I'm running 251, which I believe creeps if you ran like Adamant Scizor, for example. I didn't think you'd run Jolly Scizor versus me, just because there's really nothing to creep with that for the most part. So I felt like Adamant or no speed investment type of Scizor would make the most sense. I didn't feel like it made a whole lot of sense for me to run Jolly, just for him potentially running Jolly. I felt like the extra damage was definitely a lot more helpful against things like Latias, and the Superior Togekiss also does not appreciate this Mamoswine, and even very chipped down Terrakion will drop to an Ice Shard. Knockoff is there primarily just to remove items from things like I mentioned, a potential Flame Orb Milotic is a potential switch in for him for my Mamoswine, and the other option that I feel like is pretty good is Rotom Wash. I didn't feel like bringing Freeze Dry was really worth it in this case, just because I didn't want to have to run like special investment just to do that much damage with Freeze Dry, and then I'm wasting a move slot as well. So I feel like Knockoff just made a little bit more sense. I've got potential switch-ins for Rotom Wash and Milotic, and I'd rather just knock off their items, and that means they're kind of weaker later in the game for things like my Conkeldurr or my Mega Aerodactyl to come in and clean up later in the match. So it's kind of the idea behind Mamoswine, is just to hit stuff really hard and remove some items on those 2 particular threats. Next up here, we've got Vulcan the Heatran. We're running Grassium Z Heatran, Flamethrower, Solar Beam, Dark Pulse, and Stealth Rock. Dark Pulse is there almost exclusively for the Alolan Marowak. It also hits Latias pretty hard as well. Felt like it was better than opting for Earth Power in this match, just because I don't really need the coverage that Earth Power gives, but I do need Dark Pulse a little bit more. Dark Pulse won't OHKO the Marowak from full, but if it's taking Rocks damage, it should drop to a Dark Pulse for my Heatran here. We're running Timid, Max Special Attack. just again enough speed for Adamant Scizor. This is the main Scizor check on the team because I am a Z variant of Heatran. Knockoff is not going to remove any kind of item from me, and the damage is going to be nerfed a little bit. Obviously, I 4 times resist, Bullet Punch, and U-Turn. So unless he's running like Superpower, he's not even really going to be able to touch this Heatran. And even then, he would have to predict Heatran coming in on the switch and whack that thing with Superpower. So there's kind of a lot there for him to do, even if he's carrying it, which I kind of doubt. That Heatran is a pretty sufficiently safe switch into to the Scizor, in my opinion. It also severely appreciates the grassy terrain recovery that I've got from Bulu in the back, especially because I'm not carrying leftovers, and the damage boost that I actually get from running Grassium Z here. So I'm running Grassium Z Solar Beam just to nuke the Rotom or the Milotic potentially. This could also potentially nuke the Terrakion if he's bold enough to bring that in spite of a potential burn from Lava Plume or Will-O-Wisp or something like that. So if he's kind of bold enough to bring in the Terrakion, I'll get whacked by Grassium Z as well. Basically, the idea is just to stay in on Rotom Wash. Well, not necessarily Rotom Wash, could probably Volt Switch out, but stay in on something like Milotic coming in, and then Z Solar Beam that thing. That would make Mamoswine's job a lot easier, would make Conkeldur's job a lot easier, would make Mega Aerodactyl's job a lot easier. Just luring one of those water types would be super, super important for me in the long run. So that's kind of the idea behind the Grassium Z there. I knew I wanted to run Z Crystal as soon as I saw this matchup this week, because I knew if he brought Mega Scizor, there's potential for him to run Knockoff, and I don't really want to be losing my item. And it also kind of improves me as a switch in for Mega Scizor. Running Flamethrower over Lava Plume or Magma Storm, or Fire Blast, 1 for accuracy and 2 for damage output. So if I wanted a little better or a little less damage output but a higher chance for burn, I'd run Lava Plume. But in this case, I feel like Flamethrower is more useful. It improves my rolls on Weavile for OHKOing it from full. And actually, I think it should probably drop anyways. It's pretty frail. But more importantly, it improves my roll on Serperior for dropping that thing from full. I don't want to have that thing be living a fire move if for whatever reason he decides to stay in on me. So that's kind of the idea behind Heatran here, is just to lure one of the water types and also act as a nice check to things like Serperior and the Scizor. Next up here, we've got Scarf Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu coming in here, running Woodhammer, Horn Leech, Mega Horn, and Stone Edge. So the dual grass stab is really nice for rolls mostly. So Horn Leech isn't a guaranteed OHKO on things like Rotom Wash. It's not a guaranteed OHKO on Milotic either, or even on Weavile. But Woodhammer, of course, will OHKO all of those things from full. Even like max Fizz Def variants, Rotom Wash should drop to a Woodhammer. I could potentially surprise him on the first turn if he goes for like a Volt Switch with a Rotom Wash on my Tapu Bulu. Not expecting me to be Scarf. I can remove that thing from play pretty early, which would be amazing for me. It's also a potentially useful to lure things like Terrakion, lure things like Weavile. Basically big threats that I have difficulty switching into. Kind of the idea for this is it's my quote-unquote switch into Terrakion. So I'm expecting either a Swords Dance, Rock Polish, or both type set of Terrakion this week, or Choice Scarf. I don't think he'd really run anything besides those 2 types of sets. So the idea is if he goes for Rock Polish on my switch in, he shouldn't be able to OHKO me with a Continental Crush, and if he goes for Swords Dance, I'll outspeed him instead. So the idea is just to bring in Bulu on the Terrakion and surprise him by hitting him with the Scarf. So if he goes for SD, he'll think, oh, Continental Crush will blow this thing away. And then maybe I can get a Horn Leech off and KO that thing before he realizes that it's a Scarf Bulu. I can also potentially snake kills, like I mentioned, on Weavile, Milotic, things like that. I don't think you'd really want to stay in with Milotic on me in the first place, but that's an option for me, is to just come in and threaten that thing as well. Stone Edge is there primarily for the Togekiss and the Marowak. Obviously, a little Marowak would otherwise wall this set, but the Stone Edge is good for that. As well as, like I mentioned, the Togekiss. Neither I don't think should drop from full, but with Stealth Rocks up, there's definitely potential for Bulu to do some big damage there. Mega Horn is just for the Latias and the Serperior. Next up here, we've got Twisty the Conkeldurr coming back. This is a Flame Orb Gut set for Conkeldurr. Drain Punch, Mach Punch, Ice Punch, and Knockoff. I'm running 24 EVs in speed just to creep Alolan Marowak. So if he's putting like 8 or 16 or something in, hoping he can speed creep my Conkeldurr, I should be speed creeping that. I didn't want to invest too much in it because I did want a lot of the HP back that I'll get from running pretty close to max HP here. The bulk is really nice, but I felt like it was worth it to put those extra few EVs into speed just in case, to guarantee that I'm winning speed ties basically with the Alolan Marowak if they're already. Drain Punch, Mach Punch, pretty normal on Kinkeldr. They hit really hard, get me my health back. Not a lot on his team really wants to take a Drain Punch, except for maybe Togekiss and the Latias. For both of those, I actually have Ice Punch. Ice Punch is primarily there for Lando T, though. If he tries to pivot through that thing to get an Intimidate off on me, I can whack that thing with Ice Punch. With my Flame Orb activated, even after the Intimidate, I should be able to OHKO more offensive variants of Lando with Ice Punch, and even potentially somewhat defensive variants. Kinkeldr's just strong, man, when he gets that Guts boost. Knockoff is there almost exclusively for the Marowak, but it is nice for predicting switches into things like Latias and Togekiss, even though I could hit those things with Ice Punch. Removing their item is sometimes just as valuable to me, so that's kind of the idea behind Kinkeldr. Obviously, I have to watch out for a potential Z-Fly variant of Lando T, because that thing could OHKO me from full, even unboosted, but there's definitely potential for me to stay in here with Kinkeldr and hit that thing with an Ice Punch to remove the threat. Otherwise, I've got some switch-ins for flying-type moves. I can scout for Z-Fly with like my Heatran or my Raikou or something, or even my Mega Aerodactyl if I want to. Next up here, we've got Richard Parker the Raikou. We're running Vinku this week. We've got Leftovers, Sub, Protect, Thunderbolt, and Toxic. So max HP, mostly max speed. I think I was creeping the Superior here, and a tiny little bit into special defense. The idea behind this is the rolls from no special attack invested my Lodic to break my substitute are very poor. I think the max roll is like 25.6 or something, so odds are in my favor for him to not break my substitute with Scald. The reason I couldn't go so far as to risk not outspeeding the Superior, so I could have run enough investment, I guess, to have that guaranteed not break my sub, but I would rather guarantee that I outrun the Superior if for whatever reason he decided to run like timid max speed. But Sub, Protect, Toxic, and Thunderbolt pretty much is good for his whole team. Like the only thing that is immune to Thunderbolt is the Lando, which getting a Toxic off on is really nice, and I can use the substitute to scout for whether or not he's Choice Scarf Landorus. So if he brings in Landorus on me as I go for substitute, I click Toxic, get a Toxic off on that thing. If it's defensive, great. Like that's really nice to wear that thing down for the rest of my team. And if it's an offensive variant, like a Choice Scarf variant, I'll see that as he outspeeds me and breaks my substitute. And then I can know going into the future that I can just click Protect on that thing and scout out what move it's going to go for. So Raikou can pretty much just sit on his team potentially here. Mega Scizor is also a potential option for him to switch into. It's only a 3-hit KO with Thunderbolt, so he could potentially roost off damage on me, but I'm not too concerned about Mega Scizor given that I've got the Kinkeldr and I've got the Heatran in the back. So Raikou, I think, can put in a lot of work this week. It really appreciates the grassy terrain from Bulu. 2 turns of recovery with Leftovers would be super nice. It would basically replace the substitute. And if I get Toxic off on stuff, they're kind of getting chipped down while I'm healing back up. So nice in Vinku this week. This is pretty much what I wanted Suicune for in my draft, but I think Raikou's going to do it pretty well this game. And last up here is Mega Aerodactyl running Aqua Tail, Fire Fang, Stone Edge, and Roost. I could have gotten away with Adamant this week as far as speed creeping goes, but I felt like the extra bulk was much more important to guarantee I live things like Choice Band Ice Shard from Weavile after Stealth Rock, as well as live a Adamant Bullet Punch and Max Attack Bullet Punch from Mega Scizor at full. That way I can basically stay in on those things and remove them with Fire Fang or Stone Edge. I wouldn't guarantee I shouldn't OHKO the Mega Scizor from full with Fire Fang, but I should be doing 75+% to it as well. And if he's like an Impish variant, he's not even going to be doing that much back to me with Bullet Punch. And the Roost is potentially later in the game. If I come in on something like Lando that's choice locked into Earthquake or something, I can get a Roost off. Obviously, if he's choice scarf locked, I should say, into Earthquake, I can get a Roost off, and things like that. I can heal up on things later in the game, predicting switches, or I can just use my kind of 3 coverage moves here to hit his team pretty hard. Aqua Tail, I opted for over Earthquake just because of the grassy terrain for the most part, and over Ice Fang because it also hits things like the Marowak and things like the Terrakion. Aqua Tail doing a little bit better job on the Marowak just because it's a little more accurate than Stone Edge, but it kind of depends on the situation whether I would click Tail or Edge there. So, but otherwise the extra bulk, like I mentioned, is really nice just for living hits and then roosting up later in the game. And again, like as Mega Aerodactyl often does, it forces Choice Scarfers and is a potential kind of late game cleaning option for me if his team's chipped down. Alright, well, all that being said, let's get right into the matchup here. As you can see, brought the Weavile, Togekiss, Rotom Wash, Terrakion, Scizor, and Landorus. Wasn't necessarily expecting the Togekiss to come, but I mean, it makes sense to help deal with my Conkeldurr or my Bulu. Things I'm noticing kind of right off the bat is that Vinku is really, really good this game to chip down his team. And then it's good potential for Tapu Bulu actually to snag a couple kills here on things like Terrakion, things like Rotom, Weavile, even the Landorus is potentially not going to be able to do much to me. I basically just have to kind of wear down the Togekiss, which should be pretty easy for my Raikou to do. Raikou should be able to come in for free on Togekiss. If he goes for Nasty Plot, I should be able to outspeed him. And if he's like a Choice Scarf variant, being Choice Scarfed into Air Slash isn't going to help him too much for my team anyways. And he can't Thunder Wave me either, so... just kind of looking at lead matchup here. My best lead matchup, I think, is with Conkeldurr. If he leads like a Focus Sash Terrakion, if he leads Lando, if he leads Scizor, it's pretty much good versus everything bar the Togekiss. And I don't want to be in a bad position right off the bat versus Weavile. So I think my best lead here is to just go with the Conkeldurr as he decides to lead with the Rotom Wash. So obviously you can't Will-O-Wisp me here, because if I'm Guts and I Drain Punch you, I'm just going to do a massive amount of damage back. I don't think you Hydro Pump either, because the Tapu Bulu switch in has potential as well. I think Volt Switch is probably just overall his best play here, as he does go for Volt Switch. And instead of going for Drain Punch, because I am predicting him to either go Lando or Togekiss, I'm going to go for Knockoff here. Even if he'd stayed in, I would absolutely take that trade of removing Rotom's leftovers or Berry or whatever it's got for this Knockoff to take the damage from my Conkeldurr. And now I've got my Flame Orb activated, which was really the most important point for me from this turn, which should mean that I'm a better offensive check to something like the Terrakion later in the game. And obviously I hit everything on his team really hard now that I've got my Guts activated. Like I mentioned, he goes out to Togekiss, which is a free Raikou. Even if he doubled into Lando, I could kind of scout out what that thing's going to do. I could even go hard Aerodactyl on Lando potentially as well. And here I just get a free substitute. I don't think you ever stay in here with your Togekiss. It's way too early in the match for that, as he pivots out into Scizor, so that leads me to believe this is a bulkier variant of Scizor, and of course I don't have much special attack investment on this Raikou, so I'm not going to be doing too much to him with Thunderbolt, but it's kind of good to just chip this thing down early in the game. That'll be really good for my Bulu. I can get a bunch of damage off on this. Also really good for my Aerodactyl if I can get some damage off, so not really fearing this thing too much because I do have my Heat Ran in the back. I'm just going to start spamming Thunderbolt at it. Unfortunately for my opponent, I do get the full paralysis here on the first turn, so really nice luck for me on the first couple turns here. Getting the Thunderbolt Para into full para, and I'm just going to keep chipping down this thing, see if he's got Roost or not, and just kind of keep wearing it down for my Bulu in the back. I'm going to go for another Thunderbolt here, as unfortunately he gets full parried again. So some really bad luck for my opponent to start off this game, and spoiler alert, it's really only going to get worse from here. So I'm just going to click Thunderbolt one more time. It will KO this Scizor from this range, and if it goes into Landorus, I can always just Toxic that thing. So I'm going to go for Thunderbolt and then crit the Rotom Wash. So again, really, really bad luck here coming into the game. I think this was just like, I've never seen anything like this in my life to this point in the match, and there's still, spoiler alert again, more to come. So here comes the Rotom Wash. It's going to try to break my substitute with a Hydro Pump after I go for a T-Bolt, which will now 2-hit KO it because I got that crit. It's going to try to break my substitute with a Hydro Pump, and it's going to miss. Like, there was so much hacks here that it was almost laughable. Like, I'm sure my opponent was not particularly pleased with it, but I've never seen anything like this in my life. Like, I'm getting super, super lucky here in the early game, and I'm going to capitalize. Get a crit for good measure on the Rotom just because. But the Raikou is in. The Raikou is now. He's behind a substitute. All the hacks has really, really played into my hands this early in the game. Really, really rough for my opponent here this early in the match. But like I mentioned, never seen anything like this in my life, and it's still going to continue. We're going to T-Bolt this Terrakion as he brings it in to break the substitute. Para into full para again. Oh my god. Like, I am so sorry. I just didn't even know what to say at this point in the match. Like, I've never seen such one-sided hacks in a game before, and as you can see right now, yet another full para on the Terrakion. So this thing's basically dead. The Rotom's dead. The Scizor's basically dead. Like, what's going on in this game right now? Like, I have to give a lot of credit to my opponent in this game. Like, he took this really, really well. Like, really good sport about the hacks. Like, yes, it's the game we play, but I've never seen anything like this in my life. Since the hacks is done now, I'll take a brief second to pause it here as I go for T-Bolt and miraculously don't paralyze this thing. But I'm just going to take a brief second to pause it here. I did calculate the odds of all that hacks that just happened in a row there happening. I think if I did my math right, the odds of such a thing happening were 1 in 70,865,052 of that series of hacks happening. So that's 2 paras from Thunderbolt, 4 full paras as a result of that, 2 crits on the Rotom Wash, and dodging the Hydro Pump. I think all of that together puts me at 1 in 70 million, whatever. So like I said, never seen anything like this before in my life. Just absolutely ridiculous. Anyways, getting back to what's now basically a decrepit team on the other side of the field versus my full 6. I'm going to go for Protect here as the Weavile switches out. Protect was basically just going to allow me to kind of scout out whether or not he's choice locked into knockoff or if he's going to go for something else. Also waste off a little bit of PP. As he scouts back out into the Scizor, I make a little bit of a misplay here and go for Substitute. I probably could have just, or should have just KO'd the Scizor here, but he's going to go for U-turn to break my Substitute, unfortunately. So that should allow him into his Landorus here. I don't want to risk him just going for Stealth Rocks while I click Protect here. I'd rather get in my Aerodactyl before Stealth Rocks, and that way I can start to threaten him with an Aqua Tail. And he also doesn't know if I have Ice Fang either, so I'm going to go hard Aerodactyl here on the Lando, whether he wants to Earthquake, Stealth Rock, or U-turn. This is kind of my best play. I don't think he'd Stone Edge here, but he goes for the Earthquake. So now he's pretty much forced to switch out, fearing an Ice Fang here, but I don't really have to over-predict since the hacks put me at such a huge advantage in this game. So I'm just going to go for Aqua Tail here as he goes out into his Scizor. This actually turns out to be a very bulky variant of Scizor as it does live the Aqua Tail. But it's at 4% and paralyzed, so it's not too much of a threat to me. I'm expecting him to just sack it off here to try and get some Bullet Punch chip off on me, so I'm not going to allow that to happen. I'm going to go out into my Heatran to eat up this Bullet Punch for free. Obviously, it's not going to do too much damage. It only did 6% actually, so I'm thinking this was one of the kind of standard impish max HP, max defense type variants of Scizor. Maybe like SD Bullet Punch, U-turn Roost, or something like that. But I'm just going to go out into my Heatran and click Stealth Rocks. Stealth Rocks will KO the Scizor on switching again. It'll also do some good chip damage to Weavile and Landorus, so he's pretty much forced to defog here with Togekiss if he has it. And even if he doesn't, it's still free Raikou for me. Even if he goes for like HP Ground or something wild like that, this is free Raikou, and I can just sub once again. Like I mentioned, Vinku had a really good matchup in this game, and all the hacks that it got kind of compounded that. So now I get yet another substitute up for free here, as he's just going to go for Heal Bell to get rid of the paralysis on his Mega Scizor. There wasn't really a whole lot he could have done here regardless. I mean, you could have gone hard Lando, I guess, as one option. I haven't shown Toxic yet, though, so I might have HP Ice, so it could be fearing that. And getting the paralysis off at least means that he's guaranteed to get Alpha Bullet Punch later in the game if he wants to. I'm going to go for Thunderbolt here as he goes for Air Slash just to chip down my Substitute a little bit. Maybe put it in range of Bullet Punch from his Scizor, I'm not entirely sure. But he goes for Air Slash here, and I'm going to be able to 2-hit KO this Togekiss. Getting rid of Togekiss is really nice for my Bulu. Bulu's looking super good now with the Scizor so incredibly weak, and just the Lando and the Weavile left on the other side of the field besides that. Bulu's looking really nice to clean here with Horn Leech or... Actually, Horn Leech, yeah, should KO the Weavile from this range. And he's going to have to go out to his Lando here. I mean, I suppose he could go out to Scizor if he wanted to, just to sack it off, but I don't think Bullet Punch is going to break my Substitute from this range. Oh, he actually goes out to Weavile here. So I'm going to go for Thunderbolt here. Maybe I got a low roll Protect first to see what move he's going to go for. And then Thunderbolt to try and KO this Weavile. So he goes for Knockoff once again. Not sure, like I mentioned, if this thing's banded or not, but it's good information at least to know what move he's going for to get a little bit of health back. I'm just going to go for Thunderbolt in case I got like a low roll earlier in the game, and maybe I can potentially KO this thing from this range. There's really no reason for me to click Toxic here anyway, but he's going to go out into Lando just to preserve his Weavile for now. There's really not a whole lot he can do because my whole team's so healthy as a result of all that hacks, but I'm just going to go for Toxic on the Lando now. If he's defensive, great. If he goes back out into Weavile, great. It turns out he is Choice Scarf Lando as he breaks my sub with U-turn. I'm going to go for Toxic here as he goes out into Scizor, presumably just sacking it off to predicted HP Ice, but he's going to catch the Toxic and be just fine. I can Thunderbolt this thing pretty much for free. Even if he goes back out into Lando, I can scout for what move it's going to lock itself into by going for Protect. So I'm just going to T-Bolt this thing, get rid of it. Now it's just Weavile and Lando, so my Bulu pretty much wins the game from this point. Even Mega Aerodactyl is pretty good at this point in the game as well. Conkeldurr can kill the Weavile from the range it's at anyway with Mach Punch. Well, could have KO'd it from full regardless. So there's not a whole lot he can do at this point in the game. He just has to go out into Lando and basically pray. I can protect to scout out what move he's going to go for here. As it turns out to be U-turn, so he's locked into U-turn, which means he's not a threat to me. So I can just go for Toxic here. I could go for T-Bolt just to KO the Weavile, but if it doesn't KO the Weavile, I'd rather have the Toxic off on it just to guarantee that it's going to die at some point. It really doesn't matter too much what I clicked on this turn, to be honest. But I'm going to Toxic this Weavile on switch in. I'm going to be able to protect stall it a little bit more, get some extra chip damage off to guarantee that it's in range of Thunderbolt, and also to scout out what move he's going to lock himself into. Assuming, once again, that this thing is Choice Band Weavile. I still don't know what item it is at this point in the game because it hasn't actually hit anything. Could still be Life Orb, potentially, but I'm just going to go for Protect here, like I mentioned. Get a little bit more recovery on my Raikou. Also scout out his move. He's going for Knockoff here, which is, to be fair, his best play. Instead of going to Heat Ran here, because it's kind of risky if he's Choice Band Knockoff or something like that, or if he's not Choice Band and he's got Low Kick. I'm just going to go out into my Conkeldurr. It's basically done its job at this point, and if it lives, it lives. He goes for Knockoff here, and it does turn out he is Choice Band Weavile, unless he got some kind of crazy Adamant roll or something like that. But I'm thinking this is Choice Band Weavile, just based on that damage. Instead of risking a crit here, I'm just going to go for Mach Punch. There's no reason for me to risk the 6-0 here when I have it guaranteed at this point with my Bulu, basically. So I'm just going to go for Mach Punch here as he goes out into his Landorus. He can go for U-turn all he wants here to get back into his Weavile. I'm going hard into Bulu. There's no reason for me to not go Bulu here. I know he's Choice Scarp, so he's not Z-Fly. Worst case scenario, he hits me with like a Stone Edge, which I can heal back up with my Horn Leech. So if I go Bulu here, even if he U-turns, I just get a KO. So he's going to go for U-turn here as the Bulu comes out. And he gets into his Weavile, but there's still not much he can do because I know that's Choice Band Weavile, so it should not outspeed me. And I don't think you lock yourself into Ice Shard here. I don't even think Ice Shard would KO me from this range in the first place, but this is a free Horn Leech for my Bulu here. So Bulu's going to pick up the kill here on the Weavile, as he does go for presumably Icicle Crash, if I had to guess. So I'm just going to go for the Horn Leech here and get off Bulu's first KO of the season, actually. And now the Lando's going to come out. What's he going to lock himself into? His only options are really Stone Edge and U-turn, and he doesn't have enough Stone Edges, if he does have Stone Edge, to even get through my team anyway, so he just has to hope for some crazy something with U-turn, I guess. Like, he really has no other thing that he can lock himself into here, so he's just got to click U-turn, as I just am going to stay in and spam Horn Leech. There's no reason to prolong this game by trying to go out into Arrow or anything crazy when Bulu wins anyway. So I'm just going to Horn Leech 2 times, and look at that massive damage. I mean, obviously it's an offensive Lando, but that's some big damage coming out from Bulu here after the Intimidate. So I'm just going to 2-hit KO this Landorus with Horn Leech, and we're going to pick up the 6-0 victory, obviously on the back of, like I mentioned, an astronomical quantity of hacks. GG to nseliga. Sorry again for all of the hacks that happened in that game. Hopefully we can meet again in playoffs and have like a real game, but this was just like, this was a mess. I've never ever seen anything that bad in my life. Like I mentioned, the odds 1 in 70 million something. There's nothing you can do but laugh, even on the other side of that. Like, that's just not a game right there. But for the record books, it's going to pick us up a 6-0 and move us to 4-0 on the season. So obviously I never like to play in a game with that much hacks involved, but what are you going to do? It's Pokemon. Sometimes it happens. Obviously it's in my favor this time, so I've got nothing to complain about. Hopefully going forward we're not punished too hard for all the luck that we had in this game by the RNG. But once again, GG to nseliga. Sorry again for all the hacks. Took it really well, like great sport playing this game. Like, that's enough hacks, I think, to make anybody pretty toxic, and he handled it really well. So a lot of credit to my opponent for handling it as well as he did. But hopefully you guys can stick around for next week in week 5. We've got a big game coming up against Lunar here, who's currently 3-1. This might be the game that decides who gets the 2 or even the 1 seed in the division. So big game coming up next week. Hopefully you guys tune in again, and thank you all very much for watching to this point. If you did, have a good one. Bye-bye.